Okay, has Major League Rugby been a success? Now we're in round 3 of season 2. I've watched every single game so far, and I've been really impressed with the quality level of the league in its second season. I'm really impressed with the quality level of the Canadian and US players, and the overseas players that come to play, the international level grade players. Yeah, some of them have actually played at Test level. Some have played in Super Rugby. Some have played in the English Premiership, Top 14. Pro 14. So yeah, there's some really good players on display. They're not necessarily the world-class players, but Ben Foden's gone over to the New York team, for example. So there are some quality players who are playing in the Major League Rugby who would play at a decent professional standard in Europe or the Southern Hemisphere. So that's actually helped. And actually, looking at the physicality, some of the handling skills are very, very good. And the rugby itself has actually been refereed very, very well. The pace of the game. If you look at the New Orleans Nola Gold team, they play at an insane pace. All 3 of their games, they've scored at least 30 points, if not more. They've won every game. They've got 15 points. They only won 3 games in the entirety of last season. So they've already equalled last season's record already. And they are, from my eyes, the Nola Gold. I'll do a video on them and why they're my pick to be the best team in Major League Rugby this season. But let's have a look at it. There's currently 9 teams. There were 7 last year. They've expanded by 2 teams, which is a healthy, positive sign. They've expanded to New York and Toronto. And they already play. They have 2 teams in Texas, and Texas, ironically, is a hotbed of rugby union. Glendale and Denver. Colorado is a bit of a risky one, but Denver as a city will support anything. New Orleans, I'm a bit surprised about, but actually at the same time, the city of New Orleans has bought in. The fans are very passionate, and the crowds are getting bigger every game. So their first 3 games of this season, each game, the crowds are getting more. The team is winning. The city's buying in. Yes, their stadium is a bit ramshackle. It's a college university pitch, small college university high school stadium. But I believe as this league progresses, the stadiums will get bigger and more fans will buy in. And in New Orleans, they're doing that. New York, it'd be mad not to go to New York. They've had a big slice of the amateur scene on the East Coast. And yes, the US and Canada are 2 massive countries with East and West coasts that are like 4 hours apart, but 3-4 hours apart. But New York, getting a team there, that's where a lot of money is. They're a very outwardly looking city. There's a lot of Europeans there who would have obviously played or watched rugby, and Ben Foden plays for the New York team. San Diego, I'm a bit surprised with San Diego and it not being Sacramento, for example. I think Sacramento is probably more of a hotbed in California, but California as a state, much like Texas, has provided a lot of players over the years to the US national team, and a lot of the amateur clubs that used to play in the national championship. A lot of them are from California, and there's a big interest in California at US colleges. So California, anywhere in California, and the same with Seattle and Washington, the West Coast, much like the New England, New York area, they are passionately mad about it because there's a big amateur scene, and a lot of the players that currently play in the US national setup have come through California, the New York area, or basically just the West and Northeast coasts. Toronto, you've got to have a Canadian team because the Canadian national side has historically been better than the US, and there's a lot more Canadian players that actually were professional before Major League Rugby came along playing in Europe. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going to British Columbia as well at a later date, because the Vancouver, British Columbia area has provided a lot of the training camps for the Canadian national side train in British Columbia. I think it's where their training base is. And a lot of the players are actually from the Vancouver, Victoria Island area. So that's going to be really, really interesting if there's another Canadian team added at some point. And Salt Lake City and Utah is another strange one, but they've had an Olympic Games there in 2002, the Winter Olympics. So it is a location that they want to keep the sporting legacy going. And apart from an MLS team and an NBA team, Utah's been overlooked for pro sports in US markets. It has been. They've already got 3 expansion teams joining next year as well. So you're going to have a team in Atlanta, a team in the New England area, most likely Boston, and Old Glory has already been named, and the New England team have already been named in Washington, D.C. Now, the New England area supports rugby a lot at the old amateur levels, much like New York. Atlanta, look how they bought into the MLS. They pack out a 70,000-seater stadium for Atlanta FC, Atlanta United, I think. Atlanta will buy in. They bought into the MLS in the last couple of years. They'll buy into rugby, I have no doubt. But the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, those seasons don't actually clash with the way they've structured the Major League Rugby to take place from January, February time onwards. Atlanta will definitely buy in. The New England area, they buy into any sport. And Washington DC, you've got to get the capital of the US involved, I think, to make this a truly national league. So the fact they're already looking at some big sports markets, and they're already in some big sports markets, or underutilized sports markets as well, and actually getting in there before other major league sports do, is key. The media coverage, you've got to look at some of the big carriers. Game TV are a minor carrier. CST do mostly college sports. They're a minor carrier, but you've got CBS, ESPN, AT&T, and NBC. Noticeable that Fox is off the list. ESPN's been doing rugby coverage for the North American market for years. It covers the Pacific Nations Championship, which used to have the US and Canada until recently. Now they've joined the America's Rugby Championship. ESPN's been covering that from its inception. CBS, AT&T, and NBC. NBC are very, very good at regional sports coverage because they've got their regional affiliates. They're very, very good. AT&T also, they do the coverage for the Vegas Golden Knights. They go into new sporting markets. They're happy to do that and take that risk, and they've done very well with the Vegas coverage. And CBS are the biggest of all the four carriers there. If CBS, I mean, they host the Super Bowl. If they're buying in, that says this is going to be a success. Also, Facebook and YouTube have got links. I've watched every game for free on YouTube. Because Major League Rugby has its own YouTube channel. They've realised very quickly the reason why the Pro League in 2016 failed, there was not enough social media connection, and they've decided to get in there to expand the horizons of Major League Rugby to a wider international audience, because on Facebook they've noticed people are watching from all over the world. So they've worked out social media is absolutely key, and I've missed out Twitter on there, but they broadcast on YouTube and Facebook Live. So they've used the social media angle very effectively to market their brand and to get a bigger outreach and audience. They've already got long-term sponsorship with X-Blades for the kits and Impact Custom Gum Shields. Now, Impact Custom Gum Shields, I've never heard of them before, but they've got a long-term contract to supply all the gum shields for all the players. X-Blades, I have come across X-Blades before. They're a growing sports brand, and the fact that they've signed a long-term deal means money. And the fact that these big broadcasters have also signed up means a lot of revenue for the league. So there we go. I think it's been a success. I've really enjoyed the quality of rugby union so far. It'd be nice to see a rugby league equivalent in the US, like a dual code. These clubs being dual code, because we've got two teams in Toronto, one in union, one in league. They share the same stadium. It'd be really nice to see a rugby league equivalent to the Major League Rugby come about. It would really be nice because there are a lot of Americans who also partake in rugby league, and it is a growing sport, and Canadians as well. But for me, I think it has been a success. The fact they're already planning 3 new expansion teams to come in 3 massive sports markets, plus the sports markets they're already in are massive. They've chosen very, very well. Salt Lake and San Diego, I think, are underappreciated sports markets, especially Salt Lake City. I think that's very underappreciated. You've got real Salt Lake in the MLS. You've got the Utah Jazz. Now they've got a major league franchise. I think Salt Lake City has been underutilised as a sports market since the 2002 Winter Olympics. They could have done a lot more to get an NHL team there, for example, because they have an Olympic NHL sort of size rink and arena. They're going to be at Salt Lake City is a sleeping giant for US sports. But there we go. I think it's been a success. And the fact it's going to keep growing is really great to see. And the fact that some big media carriers have signed contracts with Major League Rugby, and that means money's being pumped in. Even though the stadiums they play in aren't big, I would expect down the line the stadiums to get bigger and them actually to expand on them and make them 15, 20,000 seaters. And if Atlanta can buy into the MLS and pack out a 70,000 seater stadium for football, or soccer as the Americans will call it, I have no doubt that they will buy into rugby, considering they're passionate about the Falcons, and they were frustrated when the Thrashers went to Winnipeg in the NHL and they lost the Atlanta Flames. They want sort of a winter sport, and this will be taking place partly in the winter months, and I think Atlanta is being badly treated as a sports market. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the US. So there we go. I think it's been a success. What do you think? Place in the comment section below. But I do believe it's been a success, and I've really enjoyed the quality of rugby in the first 3 rounds so far this Major League Rugby season, in season number 2. Thank you very much for watching. Please place your thoughts below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.